I spent 24 hours inside a game that was once considered a serious threat to World of Warcraft supremacy, but now battles with a player base of only around 200 people and a completely absent developer. Welcome to Rift. The term WoW Killer is a phrase that has been probably overused at this point over the years, but 15 years ago a game stood apart as one poised to knock WoW down from its throne. 2011 rolled around, and for me personally, I had pre-ordered the game and was logged in on day one, mostly due to the fact that the people I played League of Legends with at the time were all planning to ditch League to play it. But honestly, the game just seemed unbelievable, where even the starting areas in the game felt alive and changing and dynamic, with the main focal point of the game being rifts tearing open and unleashing demons within, causing moment-to-moment alliances between dozens of random players in the world. A class system that gave you an unbelievable amount of flexibility for an MMORPG, with the future expansion allowing you to have healing warriors or tanking mages. It really, truly was a game that was hyped to the highest of heavens. And it may not seem all that impressive these days, but when you were out and about in the world and a particularly difficult world boss spawned, only for hordes of people to pour in, including players from the enemy faction, causing an impromptu war over who gets to kill the boss, it was beautiful, amazing, brilliant chaos. And it was also the most involved I've ever felt in an MMORPG in my entire life. 15 years is a long time though, and the heights of tens of thousands of players paying not only the $15 a month subscription fee for the game, but also the pretty hefty $50 at launch just to buy and install the game, sank into a crater of just mistake after mistake in the game's leadership and direction. We'll get to the history soon enough though. What's important to me right now is trying to recapture a tiny little bit of the 17-year-old me that paid what was, for me back then, a pretty penny to play this game, and seeing if it holds up today. What those who are left are like, and if this game is worth your time 15 years later. Thankfully, Rift is free to play these days, so even though I have absolutely no chance of recovering the old account I used to play on despite my best efforts, I can still create a new character and drop in to see what changes have been made over the years. I decided to play this live on stream and see if anybody wanted to join me for the journey. Not really something a lot of people were looking to dive into, but if delving into old online games is something you want to actively be a part of, it'd be lovely if you subscribe to this channel, gave my stream a follow, and maybe gave the video a like to tell me that you're interested in seeing this kind of content. Starting off with the races though, there's 3 to pick from, each with a passive and an active ability. Of course, I'm going to be going with the dwarf regardless of what the abilities are, but just for the sake of clarity, it's probably worth to see what we're dealing with here. Alright, so let me get this straight, right? Massive group buff for everybody. Can literally fly, or has a pint. Just drinks alcohol. Choosing your class is next up, and every single class offers an incredible amount of variety, which, to be fair, is something that I came to expect considering it was one of the marketing points of the game when it first launched. Although, what I don't recognize is a DLC class alongside a specialization for each class that gives a brand new spin on that class fantasy. Warriors with the DLC can become healers, clerics are supports buffing their teammates, mages can tank, rogues can heal, and a brand new primalist class that I am not entirely sure what it does, but for the time being, I'm just going to pick something that anyone can play. Now, with a game like this, usually I enjoy playing a tank or a healer. In World of Warcraft, my main was a disciplined priest gnome called Gnobhead. In Final Fantasy XIV, I mained warrior. But this is not any old MMORPG. These particular specializations are mostly key to party play, and unfortunately when the population of the entire game, never mind the multiple servers within the multiple regions, means that there is a solid possibility I may never see another human, it kind of turns all of the advantages that you would normally get for playing a healer or a tank, like easy queues or parties desperate to have you, into a massive disadvantage. So I decided to go with the mage. I don't normally go for spellcasters, but I thought, considering the game's mass amount of variety, there'd be something in there for me. And something there was. Right off the bat, the base specs of the classes of the mage are infinitely more interesting than your average MMORPG. You've got your elemental mage that specializes in fire magic. You've got the frozen deity, which is an ice mage that heals your allies. A terramancer, using fire and earth to weaken enemies. and the Frozen Defender that uses ice magic to block damage. However, as someone whose most cringe guilty pleasure is reading as many necromancy-based Korean webtoons as they possibly can consume, everything from solo leveling to Soul Station Necromancer, to max strength Necromancer, to MILF hunting in another world, wait, whoops, how'd that one get there, pause for laughter. Gravelord was an immediate pick for me. I will play a mage in any video game without thinking about it, or any class for that matter, if it allows me to have pets, summons, or minions. I once spent hours camped next to the Stormwind Griffin station because there was a chance every few hours that a feather would spawn a spectral griffin you could tame as a hunter, but also anyone could one-shot the griffin while you were taming it. I have one. Isn't that fun? So a necromancer was what was for me. I picked my faction between Guardians and Defiant, basically Horde and Alliance, but with no real difference to anything beside the fact that they could kill me at any moment. And like that, I dropped into the game, got a brief rundown of the story. Good versus evil, demons are ripping their way into our dimension, and we are given the unique ability to bash, clobber, and generally cave in the skulls of the interdimensional interlopers. So we drop into the tutorial area, and I make the horrendous, almost comical mistake of hitting the mailbox next to where we spawn. Inside that mailbox lies a key to my very own digital property, a housing system that, from what I've actually heard about it, is actually incredible, very deep, and has a lot of things you can do with it. So I click on the keys to my house, expecting some empty plot in a gothic wooded area, and instead I am teleported to a Minecraft Unity fan game project. Now, before I break my immersion too hard, I head back and I decide to begin questing, and it's pretty simple stuff. Kill 4 guys, pick up 4 items, and I'm actually joined by one of my Twitch viewers who downloaded the game at the same time, who, funnily enough, has never played a single MMORPG in their life before. And whilst I still believe Rift is not a bad one to try for your first one, I'm a little worried that a lack of players is going to create problems for us in the future. My class is one that I'm already a fan of. I'm a necromancer who's bolstered with some elemental magic. I have my skeletal minion out stabbing people, but the entire time I'm casting magic missiles and setting ghouls on fire. After a level up, I come face to face with the soul tree system, the second biggest selling point of this MMO. The recipe for my character is 1 part necromancer, 1 part elementalist, and 1 part pyromancer. And with every point that you put into the soul of your preference, you unlock abilities and passives that help bolster your class fantasy. This, as it turns out, would come with a slurry of advantages and disadvantages. Firstly, the freedom. You can kind of make whatever you want, and even what I have on my screen right now is subject to change. If I want to swap out one of my souls for something more supportive or something that heals, I can do that. However, there are also some limitations to the class system. You can't pump every single point that you get into a single tree and rush your way up that skill tree. After a certain point, the game will tell you that it's time to start investing into one of your other 2 specs, but also, if you spread your points too thin by not having a focus, a lot of your abilities and things that will make your character powerful are tied to the number of points that you put into them. So you will be a jack of all trades, master of none, but you will not be as powerful at any one thing, and unlocking all the upgrades, abilities, and passives is going to take considerably longer. Still, never in my life have I been hit with this amount of customization in a proper MMORPG, beyond something like Path of Exile, but with people running around in the world. Well, not this game, obviously, but you know what I mean. So we cut our way across the battle-stricken town that we spawn in, leveling up as we go, and it feels as I remember it all those years ago, until we finally get to the tutorial section. That is why I dragged myself back here to begin with. Our first rift. Rifts are exceptionally simple. In every zone of the game, there is a chance that a rift can spawn, which will summon a multi-stage event that you and other players have to fight your way through. The objective of the stage can vary. It might be kill 10 guys, it might be kill 1 big guy, but generally speaking, if you're doing a rift on your own at the level you are currently at, it might be slightly difficult. It was made and designed from the ground up for group play, and I'm worried that things like this are going to be a little bit tougher later on if a zone gets particularly out of control, which I would be absolutely right in worrying about as it would turn out. Regardless, for the time being, we close up the rift. We get an MP4 video guide on how our soul tree works, which is something I've never seen outside of MapleStory. That's really, really, really strange. I don't think I've ever been given information like that before. I don't know, like in an MMORPG. And we're now in the world of Talara, free to roam amongst the trees and find players to group with. I noticed that there's a newcomers guild for every single player on the server who is under a certain level. Of the entire server, not including people from my stream, there was one single person online who admittedly was probably running around having fun and would definitely not even notice me saying hello to them. It did feel really great running around the Rift world again though, destroying footholds of enemies, taking on quests, and just generally enjoying the nostalgia of running around the land I hadn't seen in a long time. I can't even remember if these were the lands I roamed 15 years ago. I feel like the tutorial area sparked a memory within me, but so many of the memories of this game that I had revolved around less the setting and more the experiences that I went through. I remember fighting on barren flatlands against not only a world boss, but also the enemy faction, getting camped by a rogue called Shaco whilst I was trying to run myself to one of the massive live world events the devs had set up to celebrate the opening of a raid when the game started, resulting in me being killed so many times trying to get there that neither me nor Shaco got to even see the event or get any of the rewards for participating in it. These were the memories that were still locked in my head that reminded me that Rift was a good game. It was a great game, and there had to be a reason why these lands lie derelict and empty now. Some more investigation would have to be done, but for now, I had just hit level 8 and been granted patron status, which is this game's equivalent of a paid membership. Some perks came with that, and alongside that, about a dozen other abilities had been bestowed upon me. From summoning class trainers to bankers to being able to squash my own XP gain for some reason, a lot of pretty good quality of life stuff to be randomly handed to a level 8 of all things that I'm sure absolutely will disappear in the near future until I actually pay money for it again. The patron status did unearth memories that I had completely forgotten about though. The artifact system, finding trinkets and items to fill out a set of items to get rewards, and one that I vividly remember now that I have been reminded. Artifacts can be up in seemingly inaccessible places, leading to you having to complete a jump puzzle to get there. I found an artifact in a tree, ran around for no less than 10 minutes just desperately trying to find a potential entry point to begin jumping from tree to tree, but I also recall you needing the DNA of a mountain goat in order to do some of these, and while 17-year-old me had all the time in the world to literally scale the side of a mountain just to get the achievement for reaching the highest point in the area, I wanted to soak in more of what this game had to offer with the day that I had allotted to myself. It was barely after I had finished trying to climb that tree that I noticed something in the chat though. The level 1 to 29 chat, someone was asking for assistance with a quest. A human being was talking in the game, and it was the first one that I had actually seen. I immediately sent a message into the chat just to say hello before it immediately being filled with a giant, almost bot-like message that you'd expect to see on any MMORPG, except instead of being about buying and selling gold, someone dropped a link to a fan-made website called CAD Rift that is a crowdsourced font of information on the game. Everything from the new player experience to endgame to achievements, or chivos as they call them, was represented here. There was a page on that website though that really began to illuminate what exactly happened to this game. It was the page called Timeline and State that started with common questions about the state of the game, and I think it's about time we get into a little bit of the history of the last 15 years of Rift and how this game went from bustling and vibrant to a small bastion of players holding the line as hard as they can against a company that doesn't care and could pull the plug any second if they find it not profitable enough anymore. So Rift dropped at full game price back in 2011, $50 and a subscription fee. I think it's obvious to a lot of us these days that putting a steep entry point in terms of price to just buy the game and then a subscription fee is a bad idea. But free-to-play games back then still came with like a bit of a stigma behind them. Public perception of Rift was that this was a pedigree premium MMORPG that was worth the price of admission. And given all the selling points of the game, it did provide you something that WoW at the time just didn't have. Sure, you could party with people in World of Warcraft, you could do dungeons with them, you could raid or PvP, but it just did not have the magic of a game having you band together with strangers so regularly to take on stages of enemies in these rifts. The first year was looking extremely promising. The massive live events that involved everyone on the server to open the first raid was engaging and had battles between the factions to gain rewards. It was touted as being the first MMORPG that actually stood a chance at beating WoW. I was there. I remember it being fun. I did not see the last part though because of that rogue Shaco, remember. But still, with so many of these things time and time again, even after the first expansion, people began to drift back to the familiarity of WoW, of the thing that they know. 2012 saw a massive expansion, but lackluster results in terms of player numbers, leading to a drastic shift to free-to-play in 2013 and the introduction of a cash shop. At the time, it wasn't content that tremendously affected the balance of the game, mounts, cosmetics. People didn't necessarily consider it pay to win at the time, but over the next few years with each coming expansion, the player base hemorrhaged a little more each time. And as well as that, with every expansion that came, the grind got a little bit harder and it became less and less viable to play the game properly without spending some of your real money to get boosts. That takes us to 2018. Gamigo buys Treon Worlds, who are known for snapping up games that are struggling and milking them on life support. The game has a chance to live, but it begs the question if it's worth even keeping alive. What this means though is that there is almost no chance of new content, and despite the game having a chance in surviving for the foreseeable future, many players make their leave purely because they know that this means there will be no significant content ever released for the game again. There was an attempt at a WoW classic style server as well called Rift Prime, but that lasted just slightly over a year before the plug was pulled on it too. That leads us to today. A promising start and one of the biggest contenders at the time of the WoW Killer title to a patient struggling on life support. Bugs persist, a dwindling population spread across multiple regions and servers, and all that remains is a small but loyal group of people who are so dedicated to this game that when asked if they are low level too, since they're in the 1 to 29 level bracket chat, they explain that they have multiple characters all logged in with the level 1 to 29 chat open for the express purpose of helping any new players and trying to nurture new blood in the game in order to keep it alive. And the people that maintain CAD Rift are trying their best, very honestly explaining in the common questions section. You will find the leveling zones to be quite empty. Main cities have players in them, group activities only happening during peak times and only for max level players. Leveling in open world is pretty much going to be solo play all the way to 70. A section on when was the last thing added to Rift, showing when the last piece of content were added to the game, such as artifact sets, which are pretty easy to add, last being added over 4 years ago in 2021. The last dungeon being released in March of 2019, the last expansion being 9 years ago, and the last real raid, the Bastion of Steel, and the latest piece of endgame content being added October 2017. It is pretty bleak to read this, but it does read with an angry honesty of a group of people who obviously burn with a passion for this game, but also hold so much resentment for the people who have left them in the dark for so many years. My questions about where all the new players have gone was getting some answers, but it also had me stumbling face first into something I did not expect to read. For literally years of the game's lifespan, an exploit was being used by a small percentage of the players to earn infinite amounts of money in the game. What this led to was a rapid inflation of items being traded between players or on the auction house. As of today, the bug has been patched, but it will take a long time for this economy to recover if it ever can. There was no reset button to money or rollback to prevent it since it had been going on for years. And given the fact that a free-to-play character in Rift cannot hold more than 5,000 platinum in their wallet, it meant that an absolutely insurmountable task lay before new players if they were free-to-play. They needed to be self-sufficient, gathering materials and crafting items themselves without the help of other players. It also meant players can make a solid amount of money selling materials on the auction house too, but with that 5,000 platinum limit, It basically required you to spend money on the game to unlock those account restrictions if you have absolutely any aspirations of using the auction house of the game at all. Forcing your new players into playing old school RuneScape's Iron Man mode definitely seems like it hasn't helped retention much, but with some questions answered, I wanted to focus on one of my favourite parts of MMORPG games, and that was the social aspect. I had managed to find some people to talk to, and I wanted to ask them some questions. I just wanted to get a feel for how long everybody had been playing for, and the reason why people would stick around in a game that even the people that made it gave up on. Devin was the first to talk to me, saying that he'd been playing for 10 years and that the reason he was still here was because it was his only form of social interaction. Stating that, yeah, he's made a lot of friends over the years and some can be entertaining, friend or foe. Another player called Zeminel chimed in and I asked him how many people were actually still playing the game. Actually, very few. 200. They explained the biggest reason was just a lack of new content and the fact that a new player cannot buy anything in the game. Another player called Rogan chiming in saying that they can, Zeminel following it up with, if they spend money. If you've made it this far into the video, you're exactly the kind of person that I want watching my stuff. Rift means a lot to me, even if I only stuck around for half a year or so back in the day. And the fact that you cared enough to watch this far means that you are my kind of person. So, if you're enjoying this, hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments what other games like this, the ones that are on life support, the Forgotten Gems, mean something to you. Maybe we can dive into them together on stream and relive some of those gory days. The like and subscribe button are also real life buffs to my stats, and I seriously appreciate you casting them, and I appreciate the support. It was at this point in the conversation I decided to take a look at the microtransaction shop, and dear lord, the cash shop is unbelievably expensive as well, to the point I actually can't believe some of the stuff that's in there. You have all the cosmetics that, honestly, the price of those I do not care about. If someone wants to spend $5 or $500 on something that doesn't affect the way the game is played, then they are welcome to spend their money however they fancy. But going into the bundle section and seeing a mage gear bundle for 54,000 gems. Now, that sounds like a lot of gems, but you have no idea how expensive that actually is. To buy enough gems to purchase this mage set, which is infinitely more powerful than anything I have ever seen in the game thus far as a low-level player, I would have to buy 3 sets of the highest amount I could purchase at one time, and it would cost me over £200 or around $250. That is mental. I should mention, by the way, as it's happening in the background of this footage, that I am running into another reason why a new player in this game can be exceptionally difficult. So, we all know about rifts in the game, but we haven't really touched on invasions. Invasions are similar to rifts, but it's usually just packs of mobs running towards NPC settlements in an attempt to take them over. On your own, if you're at level or have NPCs with you, these aren't too difficult to manage. The rifts themselves, while being kind of difficult, can be cleared at level with a couple of people pretty quickly as well. But when the population of the game dwindles to the point that it's basically just you in a leveling zone, if rifts are not being closed, more rifts continue to open and stay open, and invasions can end up creating a minefield of much stronger than usual enemies, which leads to my situation. I accidentally got caught between an invasion and a rift that are around my level. I was blasted into dust, I took a quick corpse walk back to my body, respawned, was immediately murdered again, and the enemies are all just sticking around. This led to multiple, okay, funny, it could definitely be funny, but it's also a little bit frustrating, respawns where you're immediately killed as you edge your way closer and closer to safety. Now, they have a system in place called soul walking, where you can freely move when you're dead as a spirit, and after a timer, you respawn where your spirit is standing. Perfect for getting yourself out of giant packs of enemies and preventing such frustrating situations, right? Well, you get 1 for free, and then if you want to use it again when it's on cooldown, you're going to have to open up your wallet to pay for it. It's an hour cooldown or 45 gems to soul walk from your location. Now, this isn't a lot of money, but still, it just feels a tad penny pinchy to me. Respawning in general definitely seems to be a little bit buggy. Later on in the game, I died, tried to respawn, it put me in a completely different area over a giant chasm, and I spent a few minutes respawning, falling to my death, and rinsing and repeating over and over again until the game finally decided to try putting me somewhere different this time. But after escaping the blender, I figured it was worth asking what the fastest way to level my character might be in the general chat, and I was introduced to instant adventures. I was getting whispers from Rogan trying to give me some advice, and people were pitching in to help me figure out why my menu wasn't coming up with anything when I tried to enter them. And then a player called Darthos posted in the chat asking if people thought he should mow his lawn tonight or see if it doesn't rain tomorrow and do it then. That was apparently quite an engaging topic of conversation. People started chiming in. All of those people who, let me remind you, are on alternate characters purely for the purpose of being able to interact with new players and help them, just started chatting. And it really was this somber Magic 2 experience that the people left probably all know each other pretty well at this point, but despite the state of the game, it feels like home to them. For now though, I was eager to test out the instant adventures, the game's equivalent of Dungeon Finder or Looking for Group. And there are two different versions of LFG in this game, Instant Adventures and Intrepid Adventures. I was a bit worried about the potential queue times, but I decided to give it a try and see if anybody would be potentially online. Hold on, it's already popped. Welcome to Instant Adventure. You may notice that I have been put to level 56 and I'm in a much later area of the game than normal. Instant Adventures put you in the open world and you're tasked with a variety of different quests with a small party. This could be anything from killing 15 of a guy to collecting and handing back resources to an NPC. It also kind of introduces you to the concept of sidekicking in this game. Now, sidekicking is essentially level sync in reverse. Instead of higher level players being able to sync down to new players in order to do content with them, sidekicking allows you to boost your level and scale all of your stats to the level of the highest member player of the party in order to experience more difficult content. What I will say is that with a player base of this size, it's not a bad idea. Even though I don't get any extra abilities or spells or benefits of being higher level, I get a taste of what the higher level areas might look like. That being said, it was ever so slightly weird going from dealing 100 damage with a spell, only to then be doing over 10,000 damage with the spell, and then getting plonked back into the starting area and continuing on as if nothing happened. Well, I'm level 14 now, and I figured let's continue to let that ball roll. I had popped a potion for being a patron that I got for free that gives me a little bit of a boost to my XP, and it was time to try the Intrepid Adventures. This was infinitely more intense than the last queue that we hit. Instead of it just being an open world situation, we are fired into replicas of two of the raids in Rift, and it is hectic in here. Going from set piece to set piece, fighting screens full of invading enemies, battling scaled down versions of the bosses of those raids. Some of these areas are really, really beautiful. Sieging a city that is inside this cracked outer crust of what looks like a planet, I genuinely could not believe how awesome some of these fights were. Admittedly, half the time everybody was just completely ignoring mechanics and just face rolling their way through things, but it was fun to just fight boss after boss, explore areas that I never got a chance to back in the day. And one thing that I did notice which was really cool was when you enter the queue into the Intrepid Adventure, it doesn't stop. You go through an infinite loop of the past content of this game. You can drop in and out whenever you want, and people were doing exactly that. They did their daily quests, they disappeared, and other players appeared to fill in the gaps. We had 10 plus people constantly running through this content. Basically, a tenth of the current player base was filtering in and out of this exceptionally long piece of content. I ran through every scenario for over an hour, playing through the narrative of the story, fighting giant bugs, to fighting the Lady of Justice. It's interesting though, I searched through all the levels of the players in the instance, and surprisingly there was only a person or two who was actually higher level. Everyone was around the 30, 40, 50 mark, meaning that these were pretty new players. There were new players in the game, but for whatever reason, they were just not sticking around. After my XP potion ran out, I decided it was time to take stock of everything. Headed back to the starting zone once more and open up the abundance of chests that I had received for doing the adventures. A billion different currencies flooded into my inventory alongside a bunch of gear that was now a bit more suited to the level that I was currently sitting at, level 34. I filled out my soul tree until it wouldn't let me put any more points into necromancy, and I opened up a few of the chests that they give you for leveling up to find that a mount had been given to me. Now, looking at my character, there was definitely a stark difference between earlier today and now. I decided that I'd done as much as I could for one day. A lot had happened, and there was a lot to take in. I logged off for the evening and was ready to take another crack at things tomorrow. When I logged in the next day, I realized that I wasn't really that interested in power leveling. I think maybe I had made a bit of a mistake the day before, rushing through levels and doing all these end level raids because they had been suggested to me. I think in all actuality, what I wanted for my last remaining hours on this game, maybe for a while, were just to breathe. Breathe in the dust of the trails as I ran around exploring some of the higher level areas that I'd unlocked, breathing in the sea air, doing a little bit of fishing, my absolute favourite profession to do in any MMORPG, and trying to breathe in a little more of the people that still inhabit this game. I sat chatting to the people of the game for a little while. One of the guys had their car break down due to the battery and they were just sitting waiting for AAA as they played. We talked about the weather and where people were from. I checked the newcomer guild and managed to track down one of the new players who was roaming around the starting area. He didn't interact with me, but I, like a very normal person, sat and followed him around, just making sure he didn't run into any of the situations that I did, like getting camped by rifts and invasions at the same time. We joined a public group through a rift, and I kept tabs on him while I sat and waited for another new player to make it out of the tutorial area. I just felt like paying forward some of the kindness that I had experienced from the players of the game. That player never made it out of the tutorial, but I sat around waiting anyway. I lounged around Sanctum, the Guardian's faction capital, just hoping to see someone, and I occasionally did, but most of the time they were just bank alts or logged in and AFK the whole time. I wandered through a simulated ghost town trying to throw my mind back to when I played and when there were newbies jumping all over the place, myself included. I kept tabs on the new player I had been stalking and made sure to help any rifts that they got involved in. I cheered for him when we finished one, and despite the fact that they never even acknowledged my existence, I was happy just being part of the set dressing for somebody who might decide to pick this game up. I finally got a chance to check out the auction house, and whilst everything was quite expensive, it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it could be, considering that there was people running around the game generating infinite money. I certainly couldn't afford anything still, and there's a chance that this server just wasn't hit nearly as bad as others, but it was something. Things were coming down. In June of this year, after 3 full years of not having a single update to the game, Gamigo released a patch fixing the money exploit, and has been releasing bug fixes and small patches every 2 weeks since. In the patch notes on the official Rift website, it reads, "Well, this is but a small update, this is but the start." Yeah, this game is something of a ghost town currently, but to a small group of people, it is their home. Nobody really knows what the future of Rift holds, and it's unfortunate that I've barely tickled the surface of this game in the day that I gave myself, but all I hope is for the people that play it to get something fun to do, something that makes them want to do content together again, something exciting that people talk about that makes new players want to join Talara. If this game looks like something that could be of interest to you, it's on Steam, it's free, the people are lovely, and the game really is fantastic. I really wanted to end this video off with me trying some of the PvP, because I'm terrible at it, but I do remember it being fun back in the day. I've been queued for a Warfront for 71 minutes, so I don't know if that is gonna happen. Maybe it never will, but that kind of is how it is if I'm not playing at peak time and the game already doesn't have enough players. Still though, you made it to the end of this video, which is really impressive, and it probably means that you either left it on and fell asleep, or you care about old games, Forgotten Worlds, or tiny little niche communities that refuse to die off. And if that's the case, then you're my kind of person. So you should subscribe to the channel and maybe drop a like as well. And tell me if there's any other communities that mean something to you. Maybe next time the queues will pop. Maybe next time we will adventure into another game, hopefully together, so we can celebrate the people that still are there and the legacy of the games themselves. Either way, regardless, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.